field hospitals. The new facilities will add 1,800 beds to the healthcare system. Let's show you Milan as well, a new intensive care hospital opening today. The unit was built in 10 days and will have a capacity of around 200. Google has published reports of location data from its users around the world that shows the effects of different governments' attempts to restrict movement to contain the pandemic. The tech firm has launched a website which uses data to show how visits to public places such as train stations, parks and grocery stores are changing. The company says the data will help public health officials combat the spread of COVID-19. So let's talk to Dr. Stephanie Hare, who is a technology researcher here in London. Stephanie, such interesting data when you look at it. What do you think the big takeaway is?
Well, I think it's very interesting because on the one hand, it helps us to understand just how powerful Google is in terms of what it can know about us, what it can show about us. Now, it's taking steps to anonymize this data, and it has also deliberately dirtied its data set, it says, by injecting some randomly generated data into this data set, and that's a way of protecting individual people's location history. So they are trying to take steps to reassure the public that they wouldn't be abusing their power and their market dominance in this way. And you do have the option, if you want to opt out, you can go into your settings and turn off your location history.
We've seen, though, a big backlash over the past few years against some of the tech giants, Stephanie. Is this actually a chance for them to show where they can add value?
Yeah, so in your previous piece that you were just doing, you were talking about Florence Nightingale, and she's famous as a nurse, but she was actually even more important as a statistician. So she was like an original data scientist and used the power of data in order to understand what health interventions were effective and which were not. Arguably, the big tech companies have an opportunity here to be a sort of Florence Nightingale 2.0, if you will. If they chose to use their powers for good and in a really time-limited fashion, only for this particular global crisis, they could make their massive data sets and computing power and all of their very qualified staff available to the public, to governments who frankly don't have the capability to do all of this on their own. It's so fast moving and so massive, and really help us figure out what works.
And very briefly, Stephanie, do you think people will change their minds and think that this is actually acceptable in a pandemic? They're prepared to compromise a bit?
I think what people are willing to tolerate when it's a life-threatening situation is very different to when we eventually will get back to something that looks more like normal life.
Okay,
so we've seen that in all sorts of crises before where people have taken steps and civil liberties are suspended, etc. I would be very, very surprised if we tolerated that going forward.
Dr. Stephanie Hare, thank you for joining us, and good to have you with us on BBC World News.
There are still a few people out on the Champs-Élysées. The government was telling people, stay in your homes unless it's essential or face a fine.
California has been forced to shut down. This shopping mall is deserted. All the stores are closed.
There is now real concern about the number of cases that are presenting in London, but the truth is this virus is spreading throughout the country.
Countries around the world are going through a coronavirus emergency, but in China, we're feeling the situation's pretty much under control. More and more of them are busting out of their houses.
We break stories from more places than any other international news broadcaster. We are the leaders in global breaking news.
In the world of business, everything is connected. From global hubs to places less traveled. The big stories to your bottom line. The path can be unpredictable. But with the right insights, you can see where the bend in the road will lead. Business on BBC News. Make the connection.
In Talking Movies, I'll be coming to you